Hello and welcome. Today I'll be finishing this painting. I finished this one. Maybe I'll touch up a little bit on this one as well. I am going to set a timer for 25 minutes and I'm going to do two sessions of 25 minutes and hopefully I finish it in 50 minutes. Let's see if that's possible. Probably not, but I'm going to take 2 minutes of break. I'm going to listen to podcasts while painting and it's gonna be a fun video. In case you can see the beautiful assortment of painter's tape over here, I'm reusing it in order to not be so bad for the environment. So I'm basically gonna paint this. It's not dry, it's still wet. I painted it yesterday in oil and 3 days ago in acrylic. You can start to see over there the acrylic version. I'm doing sketch in acrylic, just a basic sketch, just focusing on the light and shadow and composition. And then I go in with oil just because it's also nice to have an underpainting so you don't paint on the bare canvas. Basically, over here is where the canvas will be stretched. You can start to see a line. So I do a sketch in acrylic. That's how I make the limits of the canvas and I can focus on the composition, and then I start painting in oil. And yeah, this is just about halfway done. I've also worked on the background in oil. As you can see, it's not delineated by the border, and I'm going to try to focus on covering some of these areas that I have already have a line. It's going to be hard to do because it's permanent marker and it just always comes to the front, but it doesn't really matter because this is the edge of the canvas. But if I decide to like stretch it until here, I should probably be focusing on painting these edges. Okay, it's enough blabbering. Let's start. 25 minutes starting now. And there you go. The timer is over. I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes so we can take a beautiful break. 2 minutes. Let's go. 2 minutes. Come on. One, two, and 2 minutes. No, I put 11 minutes. Why? I need 2 minutes. It's a bit broken, the timer. Yeah, it's 2 minutes now. It's a bit broken. I've broken it. I've dropped it a few times on the floor. It's going well. I don't know if I can finish it in 15 minutes, but it's going okay. I've focused on the foliage, and now I'm going to focus on the roses. It's going to be an interesting way of going about things. I'm using a small little brush and probably going to use another brush just now in order to make the other things. I don't know if I'm going to change the brush though. It's okay. It's a fine brush. And you can start to see I'm working with the background. So I have some leaves that are very far in the distance by just focusing. It's wet. So whenever I put the paint, I do it a few times so that it blends a bit with the background. And then I'm doing a more high contrast leaf in order to bring those and build a lot of diversity of color. And right now I focused on the edges of this rose. I've brushed some of the background inside of the rose, and then I'm gonna probably clean it up a bit. It's way too detailed, so it needs to be a bit more calm and relaxed so it doesn't seem so crazy textured. I need these ones to be more textured than the one on top. And yeah, the rest of them are going to be a bit more simple, these ones, because they are on the background. They are lower, they are not the focus point. Let's set a timer for 25 minutes. The break is over, so we're going to start 25 minutes starting now. And there you go. The session is over. I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes to take a beautiful break. We cannot properly see. Yep, 2 minutes starting now. So you can take a break and watch one of my other videos or just set your own timer. It's been a nice session. It's interesting to see how much progress can I make in 50 minutes, which is not a lot of progress, but that's how painting is. A bit slow. If you want a good result, you have to paint consciously to look at every little detail. Most people overcomplicate things. It's painting is just paying more attention than someone who would uh, look at a painting is doing. It's you are paying more attention to every little detail so that when someone looks at it, they go like, "Oh, that's so beautiful." But for you, it's just the opposite because you instead of trying to overcomplicate things, you try to simplify it and add the you go back and forth between complicated, simplified, complicated, simplified, complicated, simplified, and you find a happy medium where it's not too complicated, it's not too simplified, so that it's interesting. Because if it's too complicated, then you've worked a little bit too much and you've overworked the area. Like that painting over there is way too simplified. So it doesn't have realism, it doesn't have color, it doesn't have enough complication. But if you add the complication and it's too much, like for instance, this is still too complicated. The break is over. Like for instance, this is still too complicated. But if you break it down, this is too simplified, as well as this one, and this one is too simplified. This is almost the right amount of complicated, but this one has the perfect amount of complicated, maybe too much complication over here. So it needs a bit more simplification over there because it's repeating patterns. So it becomes kitsch, let's say, and it's not so natural. Even though this is more natural to have repeating patterns, they in painting they you if you paint enough, you understand that whenever you describe things too mechanical, too repeating in when you are painting nature, it distracts way too much and it feels like it's man-made, even though sometimes nature is way more repeated. If you do a true sketch of a tree, you're gonna see how much it repeats itself. But if you do that in your painting, you're gonna be like, oh no, this is this looks funny. Like for instance, if you make a branch that has three branches like this, like a fork, it's gonna be like, oh no, that looks like a fork. And people are gonna notice it and see it. And they're gonna be like, oh, that's a fork, it's not a branch. So that also happens whenever you do 90 degrees. If you do something that's 90-degree on a tree, it's going to look funny, even though trees just basically do it all the time. And also, if you go a weird direction that goes against all the flow of the tree, it's going to be like, what is that? Why is that branch so weird? Like, why is everything just going in that direction? And then suddenly you have one that goes in this direction and cuts over the rows and has no compositional, it just ruins the whole painting. So you learn how to edit those things that are not really adding to your composition. you leave them out basically. And soon enough, you understand what works and what doesn't, like small, medium, big, and you focus on contrast. You add 3 layers of contrast, 1 to 3 layers of contrast, 1 to 3 layers of contrast. So it's basically simplified. You add a simplification of 3 layers of contrast, and that builds a lot of complexity. But in your mind, it's just like you are doing there. There are that well, basically there are only 2 levels of shadow and light. In certain parts, there are three, but it's the same thing. You are just creating the illusion that it's more, but for you, it's the same. You're always seeing that. If you lose track of that, then you have funny things happening. Like over here, this is almost the same as this one, so it's not the second level of light, of dark. It's the third. So you've lost the idea, like this is the second, which is good, but this is the third, so I did a mistake. The third should be around here and in the dark area, but this is too dark. So then you lose track of that third layer, the second layer of color, and just understand a few concepts about how colors interact, and then you just do whatever you want. You just play with these concepts in whatever manner you want. And that's why you just don't, at some point, you don't have to think too much. You just be like, you're being like, okay, you saw me like complicating these things and scraping them and then adding more color. It's like oil paint is so forgiving. People are super scared of it because it plays too much with with itself, and it really creates muddy things, but it doesn't. Like you can take a napkin and just scrape everything and then just put it back. So it's much more forgiving than acrylic because it's not permanent. You can work it and rework it and take it away and put it back and take it away and put it back. So you are basically having an eraser all the time you want to make changes. Like if you want to basically take something off, like so let's say for instance this, you just take it off, and that's it's you have an eraser on hand all the time, and then you put it back. So it's much easier to do that in oil paint than in acrylic. So people think that acrylic is so much more okay because it dries faster, and but oil gives you so much more flexibility. And in acrylic, you just have to wait 20 minutes, it dries, and then you can paint over it so it doesn't create muddy colors and weird things. But if you know what you're doing with colors, you're not gonna have that problem. And if you have that problem, just take a napkin, put it on the surface, take everything away, just taking a I'm demonstrating the same thing but in a different way. You take a fresh napkin, you put it somewhere, you just go like this, you take all the oil out, you can go back and do the same thing, press it, and then you can put almost any color there and it's going to be super okay, especially if you put it a bit more thick. And you can do this for 2 minutes and take all of the color out. If you want, you can put even some solvent, some whatever it's called, and take it out completely until you have almost bare canvas. And it's not gonna, yeah, if you want to do like a super white thing after a green, yeah, it's gonna make a bit of pollution in your color. But if you want to do like a orange or something more close, then it's going to be super easy to just add the color. Now, it's not scraping completely because there is acrylic behind here. So that's why it doesn't scrape. It doesn't take it away completely. But if it was just oil, you could theoretically theoretically go back to the bare canvas with a little bit of a tint, and that tint is just super easy to cover up and make new values, new colors. So people don't are afraid of oil because it feels like it's constantly working together, but it's not. It's You learn to play with that. You learn to understand that the colors are not that complicated and they don't really become so weird if you know what you're doing. Like, imagine putting a green over a pink. That's madness. They are opposite colors. But if you understand that you need the combination of the two to build depth, to build harmony, you understand that you do uh, some leaves that are very almost transparent into the background, and then I'm just going to come with another darker leaf on top. Not now, but later, so that it creates that depth, so that it creates that play between contrast. And then you take that color and you bring it somewhere else, and then it harmonizes because you have that color from here, or that color from here, you have it here or here. So you com- complicate things by making them simpler. It's very simple to paint things. People just think of painting in the wrong way. You always should think of the one little mark you are making. And if it's the right mark, is it the right thing to do here? You don't have to be 100% sure. But if you are 60, 70% sure it should be there, just put it there. And that's how you do it. You just continue adding 70%, 80%, and then you start to see the 90%, the 100%, and you start to see a mark that just looks amazing. I don't know, like this one over here. Everything looks beautiful over there. So you're like, that's 100%. I'm not touching that anymore. Or this one over here. Or let's say this one over here. It's almost perfect. So it's 99%. But this is 70%, or this is like 60%. But you have to gradually go to 100%. Like, you build it up bit by bit to 100%. You're 70% sure that it should be there, then that's fine. If it's 40%, then don't do it. So but you can do the 40%, 30%, 20%. You can do them in the sketch. You can do them in an acrylic sense. You can do the, like, you see the green that's over there. That's just for show. It's for nothing. It's just to indicate there is some idea of color over there. So when you go with oil, you don't get things like this or like this or like this. You don't get the pink, and then you have to cover it completely. But then that's why you do the 40% as a sketch, the things that are lower than 50%. And then, yeah, that's just about it. You go from 0 to 100%. It's logical, but people are want to do always the 100% decision. That's the wrong way to think about it. You have to do the 20, 30, 40, and then get closer to 100% later as you go. Okay? Thank you. See you in the next one.